Hello, have you ever met someone and you knew I'm going to get in trouble with this person? Yes, this is our special guest today. We got in trouble the very first time. I say within the first 15 minutes that we were together, we got a noise complaint in our docent training. Yes, that is our special guest today, my new partner in crime on the historical scene here in the Delaware Valley, Michiko Quinones. I knew before I even met her that it was going to be trouble. But like he said, it's good trouble. How are you today, quick starters? Wherever you are, please let us know where. And definitely, if you're with a genealogy group, definitely put it into the chat. Let us know into the comment area because you might need to share with someone who is in need of a genealogy group. Today, we have some amazing quick starts for you. I'm always amazed by what comes out of Jim and Michael's mouth and in our special guest. Today, we're doing Create That Newspaper Bucket List. I mean, this is a game changer. If you're not doing this for your newspaper research, this is what you need to do. It's absolutely a game changer. And then our special guest is going to talk about carefully examining Reckless, a female Black abolitionist. We always hear about the fellas. What about the ladies? Well, today we're going to hear what was going on in the scene for the females during the abolitionist movement. But first, I want to bring on my extra special quick starters, number one guys. First, columnist editor, Jim Beidler. Hey, Jim, how are you?
I am well.
And we have genealogy tip of the day, and I think he is doing of the day. Are you on his mailing list? Hey, Michael, how are you? I love genealogy tip of the day. They're just nice little
I was
snippets.
having a bad day, but as soon as I heard you say that, that just turned the notch from 0 to 10. So we always like to hear that.
Oh, definitely. When you love people's, that's true. When you enjoy people's stuff, I actually, when I'm reading stuff, my Apple News at like 6 in the morning, some of these articles are fantastic. I will actually find their email and I will email the writer. So show those bloggers some love, right? So today, guys, we have our special guest on, and she's going to be exposing us to manuscript collections. Have you guys had any aha moments, any great manuscript research that has happened in your journey?
Yeah, my mother's surname line of Heister was somewhat locally prominent. They had some congressmen and a governor. None in my direct line. Don't worry about that. But as a result, they're the type of people whose papers were collected. And one collection of the family papers is at Historical Society of Pennsylvania. And that included a wonderful draft map of their lands, the boundaries of their lands. I think it's circa 1802. And I actually you could get the shape of the lands and so forth from the Pennsylvania State Archives. But what they included in this draft were all the neighbors and the neighbors of the neighbors. So you've got the whole neighborhood, a snapshot of the whole neighborhood as of 1802. Pretty cool document.
That is oh my God, that's amazing. You got that at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania?
Yep.
Can't say enough about the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. Michael, have you had any cool manuscript interactions?
Probably the best one just dawned on me. I discovered my mother had written a letter to Senator Everett Dirksen. It was mentioned in one of her papers or something. And I contacted his archives, and his archivist sent me a copy of the letter that she had written about 1958 or 59. So I got a copy of that letter. So that was really cool for me to get.
That is very cool. So,
I can just hear old gravelly voiced Everett Dirksen say, "Who wrote me this letter?"
But yeah, that was a real neat. They were very amenable. I had a rough time frame when it was written, and they found it and made me I got a digital copy of it. So that was really cool.
I could never get enough of manuscript collections. I couldn't even begin to share one, except for most of my manuscript dreams for my research around here has also happened at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. This is not an HSP show. I will not say their names again, even though I do love them. But we have another place that I absolutely adore that I actually asked them if I could have my ashes sprinkled there. Because it might be proximity on where you could like expand when you're not here anymore. So I want to be near the Library of Congress. So let's talk about our quick start today at my number one love place for research. And it's not about the Library of Congress, but they are helpful. Create that newspaper bucket list. First, I want to ask you, what's on your bucket list that's not genealogical? I'd like to know more about you too.
Wait, there could possibly be something other than genealogy. I am not very well canyoned. I have not been to the Grand Canyon, so that's one bucket list thing for myself. Yeah,
Michael, non-genealogy bucket list item.
I can't. To be really honest, they all have some weird genealogy connection, even really extraneous. It's just. Visiting places they live. That's on my. That's
Michael can't.
There's historical stuff.
He's too deep. He can't. He cannot see outside.
And I can't get over. Jim said the word canyoned as a verb or what adjective or whatever, and that's just like I'm sort of wrapping my head around that, so I'm kind of off for a second. So you got to.
Well, I'm glad you have the headset on to be wrapped around your head. So.
Let's see who we have with us so far today. Hey, Tammy, how are you out there in Atlanta? I've been wondering how you've been doing. Hey, Val at GSP. Nice to have you. And hello, Katie. HSP. I said I wasn't going to say it anymore. In the house, Katie, how are you? And hello from Marie at PG County. I just love saying PG County because it makes you feel like you're actually from there. But welcome, PG County Augs. Thank you so much for letting us know you're here. So let's get started with newspapers. I absolutely love newspapers. And let's create that newspaper bucket list. And I promise you guys, if you listen to these fellas, this is game changing. If you're not doing this, everyone needs to be doing this. All right. So step one is to pick a place and a time to research. Okay, so this, we have to kind of, this is the hard part.
Yeah, and of course we use this as the step one for a lot of our quick starts because yes, they are the crosshairs of genealogy and all that. But it's especially important with newspapers because newspapers can very quickly, historical newspapers can get out of control very quickly because even older ones of us, you see newspapers today, it's the twilight of the industry, but you go back to the 1800s, early 1900s, there's at least a weekly newspaper in every county seat and usually several. And I haven't met a person yet who when they come to me for help on something, who I think has covered all the bases as far as newspapers. That's kind of why I wanted to create this quick start to drill it into you that there are many more newspapers out there than you think there are.
Well, to kind of reiterate a little bit of what Jim said, part of this, his misconception could be just if he's not well canyoned, but he mentioned county seats that you might not think of having 3 or 4 papers, and that's true. But there might be a lot of little outlying towns that today might have 200 or 300 people, and you might think to yourself, well, they never could have had a newspaper in 1900 or 1890, and you could be surprised. It might not have been a 50-year, run of issues, but even a 20 or 30-year time span of things, you might be surprised what's in those newspapers. So, as we're going to talk about, you pick your time and your place because that's always essential. And then that, once you got some focus, then you can kind of move around a little bit geographically.
And when I say time, now a lot of times we're talking one lifetime, but you may, again, in newspapers, you may want to spread that out a little bit further even. Yeah.
Most definitely. And I mean, we have a little tiny newspaper that I did not even know exist in Berlin, New Jersey, that my cousin was religiously, oh, I got to make sure that I put our reunion into the record breeze. And I'm like, Floyd, what? Who's even reading that? But it's a trail that's out there. So we really
Floyd is the man.
Floyd's always the man. Yay, Floyd. All right, so we are picking a place and a time, the crosshairs kind of focus in. Doesn't have to be a year or even a lifetime, right, Jim? But all right, so step 2 is to create a list of available newspapers by going to Chronicling America. Jim, I got it out. Did you notice? I got it out.
I did notice that. Yeah,
so
very, very
Chronicling America, if I could do it again.
You can't. So let's bring up the first slide, and Chronicling America. It's a joint project of Library of Congress and who else? The National Endowment for the Humanities, NEH. And it has 2 major components to it. One is that they have been giving states grants to digitize newspapers, and then copies of those historical newspapers go for free on the Chronicling America site. So that's the one thing, and that's good. It's got several million pages, but remember, that's a tiny little fraction of the total newspapers out there. To me, the more important thing about the Chronicling America site is the U.S. newspaper directory, and that's the red circle in the upper right hand corner. And that's going to be your North Star to create a historical list. And I'm going to interrupt myself just so I don't forget it later. This is as of about 1980, what was known, because there was a U.S. newspaper project that created lists of the newspapers. There are a few newspapers that have been created since then, and some things that have changed. There, you'd want to go to WorldCat for that. But for historically, for most of our uses, you're going to go to this U.S. newspaper directory. And then I think we want to go on to the next slide. And
I love this. They have so many ways to filter. You can actually over filter.
Well, yeah, you can over filter because for one thing, a lot of these newspapers, they don't even know for sure how long they were published, and if they have in the date 18XX, and you have it too truncated your search, you might not get it. So you need to be careful of that. But yeah, what's being highlighted here is you can just look at dailies. Well, I wouldn't do that because a lot of the weeklies are a lot of the more important ones historically. But the language, if you want to look at German language press only, ethnicity press, where a newspaper might be in English, but it caters to Lithuanians. Labor press, people who were in unions, they had their own thing. So you've got a lot of different types of newspapers as you go back in time.
Very awesome. Do you want to go into another slide or to another step?
I think Michael has something to say.
I was going to remind people, though, these are not necessarily all online. This is a finding aid to make you aware these things existed. Then you will have to use Google and WorldCat, and maybe, heaven forbid, go to I think it's called library, to access these, because they might not be online. But the nice thing, is that it's a way you can find out about them, get rough dates of when they started, maybe ended. Keep in mind there may be some of those XXs. That doesn't mean anything bad. It just means they're not really
That's
sure.
if it's XXX.
XX, yeah, okay. Anyway, but you want to keep that in mind that these are not online. You're not going to click and get the images. You're going to find out they exist. But the nice thing is, compared to how we had to do this years ago, you can not leave your house and find out they existed, which is a big start.
Yeah, and that's the bucket list concept, is putting together the universe of all the possibilities of newspapers that might exist for a particular area and time period.
And do that for each of your groups. So you're going to start with just one. Are we looking at slides or next step?
Let's go to slide.
Okay. So I love that you can filter down by whether it's ethnicity or language. Oh, and here's another filter. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the filters, like I've touched on, you can filter down the dates, and in some cases you've got to do that, or you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of extraneous entries. But the most important ones are the geographic ones. You have to choose a state. You can then just limit it to a particular county. You can further limit it to a city. Again, unless it's a big city, I don't recommend going all the way down to the city level. Just drill down to the county level.
Yeah.
And then if we go on to another slide I show you that my home county, Pennsylvania, Berks County, and I did drill it down from the beginning, 1690s, when the first American newspapers published, to 1850, just to give it a little bit of definition. And then if we go one more slide, then you'll see that there are 45 newspapers in Berks County, Pennsylvania, just through the mid 1800s.
Wow.
And yeah. And then I could further limit it if I just wanted German language or English language, something like that. But lots of newspapers to potentially look through. Now, as Michael already said, a lot of these won't be online anywhere. And some of them won't even be extant. They are in this on the basis of having been described as, like in a county history, that the Reading Simmeldinger was around from 1820 to 1830. Maybe not a single issue still exists, but you should have this in the bucket list, because old newspapers are sometimes still turning up in people's attics, publishers' attics, and so forth. So
you were scaring me. Like, I was really sad. Like, I was like, love the directory, and you're like, it might not exist.
Well,
what are you talking about?
This is an on the one hand, on the other hand type of thing.
Okay. No, so I love that. So this is how I just recently used this, is that I am looking for specific papers for a specific time, and I go to my favorites, newspaper.com, Genealogy Bank. Don't they have everything? Absolutely not. Once I look at the list of the papers, you're like, you smell Shabelle, because you shouldn't even thought that. But I thought that they would have a decent amount, but the main, like, half of the papers I wanted are not on there. So
I was going to give the buzzer sound.
Oh.
Yeah, for a lot of the small weekly rural papers, that's not the place to look. I mean, you should try, because but that's not the place to look for a lot of those small weeklies. They're more difficult to find than
county libraries and things like that. You might find them there. Yeah. Go to another slide, and I highlighted the Berks and Schuylkill Journal because that was a major newspaper. And then this one here, this is showing you the whole readout of all the information that's on it. If you click one more slide, it's going to show up a little little larger. And, it gives you the place of publication. It gives you related titles, because a lot of these darn newspapers
Oh
kept
my
changing their
gosh.
titles. And so you want to know, a whole family of newspapers. It may seem like it went out of existence at one point, but no, it just continued under another title.
This drove me crazy. This is like the genealogy of newspapers.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Man, do you
Exactly.
need this? Or you're going to go insane.
And I have highlighted here, view the complete holdings. And if we go on to the next slide, on that, it'll give you the listing, mostly on microfilm. Sometimes, in some cases, it's paper form. And for this Berks and Schuylkill Journal, the entire run, 1816 to 1910, is at Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania, on microfilm. But if you go one more slide, there you'll see some of it is on Genealogy Bank, one of those major subscription sites, but only part of it. The early issues, 1816 to 1831. So you shouldn't think on those major sites that whatever run they have listed there, that's the entire extant run.
And that's when you go from searching to researching, right?
Yes. Yep.
I love that. I love that. So we are going to Chronicling America, and we are creating a list of these newspapers. That was step 3. Step 4, we had that we are extending our search to adjoining counties. Okay.
Yeah, because you saw where I had drilled down to Berks County. And here's where your knowledge of history and geography has to come into play, because you don't want to stop there. You want to look for newspapers in the time period in the adjoining counties. In the case of Berks, that is Schuylkill, Lehigh, Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Lancaster, and Lebanon. I did that from memory.
All right, Mapman Weidler.
Yeah. I don't know, Mapman sounds like Mothman from West Virginia, but
you want to do that even if they, because sometimes we'll say if they live near the county, you always want to do that. But even if they were in the center of the county, those adjoining newspapers, they publish snippets of what they found in other counties' newspapers. And so there may be a better, those papers may be extant. We talked about ones you can't find. Maybe the ones in the neighboring county are more extant for the time period you need.
Yep.
So you're going to have, in that case, you're going to have to look at those, because there may be some references in those papers. Not as many as would have been in the hometown paper, but there'll be some.
Yep.
And especially if it's sensational, the other county is definitely going to want to poke fun and say, look how crazy they are over there. And that happens.
But you want to, I know, I realize Jim knows all the neighboring counties because he's lived there forever. But in areas you're not familiar with, have your maps. Because like the county where I'm from, it borders 2 other states in addition to the counties in Illinois. So you want to be thinking about that. And if you're not familiar with the area, have that map right there with you when you're doing these searches, so you could mark off which counties you look for entries in.
Exactly.
All right. And step 5 is to locate the availability of the records online or offline. And so we're doing that at the Library of Congress site as well, too, right, Jim?
Yeah, because like I showed you with the Berks and Schuylkill Journal, the entire run is on microfilm offline at the Albright College Library, but you do have some online at Genealogy Bank. And then also, remember, it's not just the newspapers themselves, but newspaper, what do we want to say? Newspaper adjacent things like abstracts run in genealogy journals, things like that can be valuable to your searches too.
So Percy, we could use Percy to help with that, right?
Yes. Yep.
Get those abstracts. Yes, I love that. What did you call it? Newspaper adjacent?
Yes, newspaper adjacent resources. Yeah.
I love it. Do you have a whole talk on that? That feels like a talk.
Of course I do. You remember, I wrote the book
He's
on newspapers.
got a whole canyon of talks on that. Yeah.
Canyon is the word. So you guys have any questions for Jim and Michael on newspapers while I bring up some of Michael's examples?
Yeah, these are a couple examples of things that were published a distance away. So, one thing to keep in mind when you're searching, somebody might be mentioned in a newspaper a distance away. You might have an idea of that. You might not have a clue about that. This one, published in Macon, Missouri. My great-great-grandmother, underlined in red, never lived there, but she did go. Her sister lived there for a while, and she went out there and made a visit. And so it documented that, where she lived, documented the relationship. This was helpful for me because it gave the best rendition of the woman's last name that I did not have. It also indicated Nancy was a miss, which is wrong. She was married at this point in time. She was a widow, but she was married.
She was married.
But people may be very easily mentioned in papers in areas where they never lived at all. This is one. I think there's another example as well. Yeah, Rampley was kind of the last name of the day. This was in South Dakota. These people were from Illinois. And what I like about it, in addition to searching in a variety of locations, it makes a very good point that sometimes people are named by their first name. It just says Mr. and Mrs. Rampley. It refers to Mr. Rampley later. It refers to Mrs. Rampley later. It does not mention his first name at all.
And sometimes they put the Mrs. in the man's name, which really makes me want to just freaking rip the paper up.
And the other name that is spelled there is my last name. That's my double great grandpa, and that's spelled wrong too. So just a couple quick reminders. Besides all the things that we talked about, not every name is listed. Things are spelled wrong. You've got to be thinking about those things too.
Yep.
And it's especially important with ethnic newspapers. They most definitely were all over the country. Like I find New Jersey news in the Chicago Defender because they didn't see themselves as just talking about the area. They were talking about blacks.
That's probably the biggest of all the ones that include a lot of things from a lot of places outside their publication area. The ethnic newspapers tended to do that.
Well, and
in touch, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the point that Tim Pinnock, the godfather of African American newspapers, that he made is they were trying to keep in touch with places where they had come from. Where kind of people in the Great Migration from the southern states, especially those places they had come from, there would be little columns in the northern newspapers.
I love that. Thanks for the Pinnock ad. Keeping in touch with back home, down home. Love that. Let's go through these wonderful steps. I love this. I'm going to remember to institute this more in my life. So you want to create that newspaper bucket list. Step 1, pick a time and place to research. Step 2, select newspapers for the location and time period. Step 3, create a list of available newspapers using Chronicling America, the Library of Congress. It is your book, just bookmark it. You should be able to easily get to that all the time. Step 4 is to extend the search to adjoining counties. And step 5 is to locate the availabilities of these records on and offline. They are not all at newspapers.com. We know this. They are not all at Genealogy Bank or newspaper archives. Jim has broken my heart and said they might not even be available, but at least you have a title, and sometime an attic is going to be cleaned out, and your
a canyon.
Or canyon, and it's your newspaper. Guys, thank you so much for that. Quick start. We hope everyone enjoyed that. All right. See you later.
See ya.
Hasta la vista. All right. Give me 1 second before we bring on our special guest. Hello and welcome to our second quick start, which I am so excited to bring to you. And without further ado, I'm going to bring her on, Michiko Quinones.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for stepping into this space and sharing. When I say this woman is a firecracker of information, I mean, we have to make each other get off the phone. And we basically have decided, we thought we were going to plan to go to HSP tomorrow together. And we were like, as soon as I said it, not a good idea. They would have put us in separate rooms.
Kick us out. Quick second. They would have been like, can you all please be quiet? This is a library. And we'd be like, look at this letter. Look at this letter. It would be a mess. It would be a mess.
So what's wonderful is that I am doing research in the early 1800s abolitionist era, and I meet a person who is just salivates over these records. So it is a blessing to meet you. And before we get started with your quick start, which I want to spend every second on, how we always like to know like your 1 minute story, whether it be getting into genealogy or getting into these manuscript collections that you're going to share with us. When did you get started in it? And how did you know, like, flatline, you're hooked, that's it. This is your life. Your life is being taken over by this thing.
Well, I think it started with, I stumbled on what's called the Register of Trades. And what that was a listing of every Black business in Philadelphia in 1838. And there were 600. And my head was like, wait, what? 600? So like for 600 businesses to exist, how many people need to support that business, from customers to credit to newspapers to advertising? And my mind exploded. And that was it. And now we're at the 1838 Black Metropolis website. Literally started from the Register of Trades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you haven't, I'll have a slide. It's the 1838. Do you just want to quickly tell what 1838, why that was an important time?
Yeah. So before 1838, so let's just talk about how many people there were, like about.
No.
Okay. Before 1838, Black people in Philadelphia could vote. And there was a huge effort to disenfranchise, to remove the right to vote, because I think that people were starting to realize that the Black vote could be very powerful. And so out of that, the Black community kind of rose up and did this Hearts and Minds campaign and produced all the statistics. And one of them was the 1838 census, which is a unique statistical document in that it captures the insights of a whole population of Black people living together in a very concentrated area. And so it's really quite a unique document, quite a unique snapshot.
And so everybody, we're going to give you the link where you can go and check this all out. I mean, the site is we can't give it to them now because they will stop talking to us.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get started with your wonderful quick start. I want to hear all about this amazing abolitionist in carefully examining Reckless, a female Black abolitionist. So amazing stuff. So just maybe tell us like a teensy bit about her. Do you want to get started with the steps because you're afraid that, you tell me how we go? Just why did you pick her? Let's tell me, why did you pick Reckless? Because you're researching a lot of people. Why Reckless?
I think I was really fascinated by the fact that she ran a shelter for Black women by Black women in 1842. And I'm like, 1842, she ran a shelter. And she's in all these records. She must have had such an impact because she's in everything. And so then when I started looking at her life, I mean, that was it, hook, line, and sinker. I mean, and maybe we can talk about those steps, but yeah,
so let's go through
the amazing things she did.
So let's go through these steps so we can carefully examining Reckless, a female Black abolitionist, and really talking about how you uncovered her life through manuscript collections, right? It wasn't just going to ancestry.com or family search. You went into the manuscript. So let's go through to step 1 on your journey. which was to search online using keywords, including your cluster family and organization. So this is kind of key. It sounds simplistic, but tell us how this can really change your research.
So I think the cluster is really important. So in regards to Hetty, she had a couple of clusters. She had a cluster where she was from, and she was in those records in Salem, New Jersey. And then when she moved to Philadelphia, she had a cluster there. So while I didn't really get to understand how much I needed to really research her in Salem, until I came across the name Reckless in Burlington, because there are a lot of white Recklesses in Burlington. And that's the only place I could find Recklesses. So I started to realize that there was some kind of weird connection happening between Salem and Burlington. But then I also realized that she was coming up in records in Salem that had to do with abolition. And then I started searching her online, and I searched her and abolition. So then I was like, okay, so that what are the two here? So that was the keyword, right? So then when I searched her and abolition, then that opened up abolition societies she belonged to. Now, again, she's very, very well documented. But once I found the abolition societies and her name's in those records, that's when I started going to the places to find the original records that she was listed in. So, for example, I found her in a book about Black female abolitionists, and then I looked in the sources of that book and saw that there was a letter that they referenced, but they didn't have the whole letter. I wanted the whole letter. And so then I was like, you know me. So I was like, okay, we're going. We wound up going to Salem and Historical Society of Pennsylvania.
All right. Yes, HSP again. So those keywords, and I'm doing, I actually had to make a list because my keyword list is just like extensive now. And just having a list and having a spreadsheet where you're just like, no, did not find here, did found here, is really helpful. Because like you said, words like abolitionists make a huge difference. You know, we want to call them freedom fighters, but that's not what they were called back then, right?
Right. Or the societies they may have belonged to. One of the things that's great about the 1838 census is that it does list the society, the beneficial society that people belonged to. So if you can find your ancestor there, you can find that society. Then Google that society, because a lot of these societies have their historical records and they're just kind of like, you know, they might be buried like in some other historical record, but you can find that by just having the name of that beneficial society.
Organizations are key in manuscripts. Organizations bust open stuff for me in Blockson's collection. I used to go to Charles Blockson and I'm like, what's here for me? But once I got names of organizations, manuscripts opened up. All right. So we got those keywords.
Yeah.
We are now moving on to step 2, which is to read these articles and books. So the book you talked about that you found referencing the Hetty Reckless letter, was that a Google? Was that online you found that?
Yeah, well, I'm also in grad school, so I was able to use some of the more like pay databases like ProQuest.
Yes.
And so because of that, but I know that if you go to certain libraries, you can either get free or reduced to get into some of those databases. Because what they do is they actually research journal articles too. And so I just typed in Hetty Reckless, or I typed in Moral Reform Retreat, which is the name of her retreat, or, you know, American Moral Reform Society. And I would just dig in and then read whatever came up. And it's just, you know, once you start reading, you can start connecting the dots. And those books you can Google, but getting the inside of the book is often a little bit hard. So again, if you can get to a library where they can get you into that database, because a lot of times they've digitized the books and you can actually get in. But the older books a lot of them are on Google. Yeah. So like, for example, like William Still's Underground Railroad, I have a connection from Hetty to William woohoo,
Woo.
via the organization, because he went to school at the Moral Reform Retreat. And that's
Oh,
mentioned in his biography. So again, I found the Moral Reform Retreat, and then I found the connection to Still. And that's because the Underground Railroad, since it's older and almost like a Bible of abolition in a way, and freely available on Google Books. So there's starting to be more and more available out there.
and I will mention it is annotated by HSP online as well. Step 3. So we got our books, we have our articles. Let's not forget about JSTOR. We want to research genealogical records. So are there any genealogy records that help you with Hetty Reckless?
Yeah. And so for this, I actually had to go down to Salem and realize who her mom was. And that was captured because her enslaver kept a list of the people that were enslaved by him. And so they had the list of those names. So that's how I found Hetty's mother. And then Salem had also graciously also made copies of the sort of like 1840, 1850, and 1860 censuses specific to Hetty. So I was able to do that and find that there. Let's see, then she wasn't in the 1838 census. And I think it's because at that point she did not want to.
She was a fugitive.
Yeah, she did not want to get sent back to Salem. So I think she was like, nah.
And we have some really cool documents we're going to share with you that came from this research. But I want to go through some of the steps because I know I will get like sidetracked once we start looking at them. So you looked at some genealogical records. And then step 4 is to, if I can make it come up, is to visit the local historical society. Yeah. Michael likes to call that boots on the ground.
Hey, I love it. That is,
you gotta go hang out. So what I just always, because it feels like you're just stepping back in time and hanging out with the people who know the time period. What is it that you love about going to the historical society?
Well, okay, so there's 2 that I did for Hetty Reckless. One was Salem and one was HSP. So Salem is still in the building from 1750. I know. I'm like, oh, this is blowing my mind. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, it's so old in here. And me and you, we love that stuff. So it was incredible. You would love it. And they were really helpful, really nice. And then so the great thing about a small local historical society is that they're often so like concerned about you. They really want, oh, wait, we've got this. Oh, wait, we've got that. Like they're really trying to help you with your research, which is great.
They're like they become your research assistants. Like once you're there, your research project belongs to them as well. So yes, we love them. Let's move on to step 5, I think, which is to research the manuscript collections. So let's show some of your images from your slide. And what do we have here first?
Well, this was just a description of the Moral Reform Retreat in what was called the Quaker Walk. We'll talk about it, but it basically, they described the house. A group of Quakers came to visit the house and they described it. It was the corner of 7th and Lombard, but it's not there anymore. Okay. But the way they described it, I just went down to that area and I found a house that was probably very similar. 2-story old. Yeah. And then this is Salem, and John Rock is from Salem. He's a very famous Black lawyer. And then
John Rock. Yeah.
Yes, he's from Salem. And then this is the house. So they moved this house to the center of town. This is the house where she was enslaved, where she got hit and everything. So by her enslaver, but they moved it. They moved it to the middle of town. And so
he was a very prominent person, the person who enslaved her.
Yes, Robert Johnson was the person who enslaved her, and she was his mother on her deathbed had said that Hetty would go free. And that's when you would free people, is when you were dying. And it did not get written down anywhere. So Robert kept her enslaved for like 20 years after that.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And so that's when she started communicating with the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. And I know because at Salem, they have letters received at the mailbox, and they have the names of the people who received the letters. So that's another reason to go to the local historical society.
Yeah.
And so I found that name, and I'm like, well, she was probably already starting to talk to the folks, because when she left in 1825, almost immediately she was at the doorstep of the Abolition Society, and they have a letter saying Hetty Reckless is here and all those kind of things. But it's just, you know, he was also just a terrible person. He was so terrible that, and there's a document where he did something. He invited people to watch
I
him.
think you have that on here somewhere.
Oh, okay.
I think you did.
That's what it is. Yes. I've been credibly informed that you rise from your family prayers to damn your Negroes, your poor half. Right. So he did something so heinous that they took out this Robert Johnson kind of pamphlet from a local reverend against him.
Wow.
And so, you know,
he was pretty bad.
He was bad.
Not there was anything. Yeah, that was pretty awful.
Right. Yeah. And this is just a screenshot from HSP where they kind of show you. This is just they have a great search engine where you can type something in and you can get, start.
I love Discover. Oh my God. Oh my God. I love it. So
yeah,
people don't think that there's slavery in New Jersey.
There was slavery in New Jersey. So basically it was like East and West Jersey, which is like now North and South Jersey. But you can almost think of South Jersey as a Quaker colony, and having it manumitted most of the enslaved people, but North Jersey didn't. So it's almost like two different zones. And then you have all these, Lawnside is one of them, underground railroad and like sanctuary cities just dotted throughout Southern Jersey because of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when she first came. This is when I went to HSP and I found this letter.
Oh.
This is one of those things where it was like really hard not to scream when I was in. Like, oh my God. And
so what's this letter telling us?
Yeah. Amy told us that Mr. Johnson, that they hit her. So it's describing where she came to Salem and how she came. She basically just came in on a coach, and this describes. So I guess what you would do with the society is you would describe your story almost the way William Still would take people's stories.
Right.
What happened to you? So she is starting to develop a case against him, and that's what the Pennsylvania Abolition Society did.
Okay.
Legal cases. And so this manumission record, oh my God, it's so if you're looking for someone, go to Discover, go to that website and search the name, because they kept meticulous records. And that's how you can really start to find people. And there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
1,000 or something people. Like there was just a lot. But yeah, each record is there. Here's the kind of the transcription of that. Severe usage by Robert's wife. They pulled her hair out. They knocked out her front teeth. I mean, so she's like physically really abused.
Wow.
But anyway, this is the letter, that talks about, hey, she's here, and we are the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, and here's what she says about you. In other words, back off.
Wow.
We have her now, and she's going to start seeking legal aid. Now, that didn't stop Roberts from trying to find her and sending somebody into the city to find her. But yeah, I mean, we have to think about Philadelphia as this zone of protection. So we haven't talked about how big the Black population was, and that there was like 20,000 free Black people in 1838, and all within like a kind of 1 mile radius of each other. And so,
and this was the 7th Ward? No,
prior to the 7th Ward, and also east of the 7th Ward. So Dubois wrote the 7th Ward in 1908. But what we're talking about is a very rich, kind of bustling Black city, basically steps away from Independence Mall. So it's in the neighborhood that we now consider to be Society Hill. And that was the center of sort of Black life, Black abolition, Black nation building, education. It's where ICY got started. It's quite an incredible place.
It definitely was.
1838 is, Harriet Tubman was 21 at the time, right? That's how far back it was. Yeah.
So you have this slide to just show some of the activity that was going on there.
Yeah, just to give people a sense of how big, again, we're thinking, go back in your mind, because we're so used to thinking 1850s, Sojourner Truth, William Still. This is a generation before William Still.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Hetty Reckless was able, like 10 years after this, to have a school that William Still would come in. He came into town. He was looking for a job. He knew he needed to improve some of his reading skills. He found a night school, because there were so many schools for Black people in 1838, 1840. There were, 23 private and public schools. There were, we talked about the 600 people who owned businesses, 80 beneficial societies, 40 million in wealth. So this was a stratified society. There were some very rich people. There was, large kind of middle working class. There were some people who were very destitute. But for the most part, it was like mostly just that middle section of working class people. Now for Hetty, this is really fascinating. The Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. There were a lot of these societies that were fighting.
And they were the first.
Yeah, the anti-slavery. Yes, they were. And then the female arm came.
No, I meant the PAS.
Yep, that's right. But in the PAS, the Pennsylvania Female Anti-Slavery Society, in the Female Anti-Slavery Society, there were free Black women who were part of what we call the Philadelphia elite. Hetty was the only woman there who had been enslaved. And it was sort of this kind of, you almost want to think of it as the policy arm of abolition, but then there's the refugee assistance arm, and that was the Female Vigilance Association.
Gotcha.
So those two, she was the conduit between the two. And you would see that in the notes of both of the female. Hetty came in, asked us for $30 for people. We gave her $30 so she could go buy food or whatever it was that she needed to do.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness. Oh, yeah. My goodness.
This is just a picture of Pennsylvania Hall. I mean, there was, again, a rising tide of racism as it became very clear that, this kind of milieu could become its own nation state with its own political power. And so there was a disenfranchisement, but also the rise of white mob violence. And Pennsylvania Hall was basically burned 3 days after it was built. And it was, if it existed, it would have been just a pearl and Philadelphia's cap, because it was a center to freedom and to justice. And it was built by abolitionist dollars and by the Black community. So, yeah.
Torn down.
Yeah.
So burnt down, I should say. And so you did all this and you created a walking tour. So I just absolutely love your energy. I think that what are these walking tours, and how might someone, without dating anything, how might they get in contact with you to learn more about them?
Well, so we did a lot of walking tours over the summer. We're taking a little hiatus over the winter. I've got to finish school, so literally don't have all the time. But I think what we're going to do is kick them back up in the spring.
Okay.
And we've got some interest from teachers as well. So we're trying to think about how to make them more age appropriate, like for first, second, third graders. And Shamel, I know that you and I can get down on that one. And then
third grade is the best grade.
They are the best. Second, third graders. So we have a walking tour page that has a layout and a site and describes each site. So if you wanted to go on your own, and it's mobile friendly, you could, basically keep that link, go and walk the path. Most of them are only about a mile. They are cobblestone, so you want to wear comfortable shoes. And
I love the cobblestones. I love the cobblestones.
Yeah.
Let us run through your steps for, this is so fabulous. Thank you. Carefully examining Reckless, a female Black abolitionist. So step 1 is to search online using keywords. Know those organizations and the people they were around. Step 2, read articles and books. Step 3, research genealogical records, which we don't need a step for that, right? Step 4, visit the local historical society, either, the Salem, the small local county town one, or the historical society on steroids, like HSP. Step 5, research manuscript collections. Step 6 is to create a walking tour. I definitely want you to definitely check out the 1938 blackmetropolis.com.
1838,
Oh, did I say 19?
Yeah.
1838 Black Metropolis, fantastic website. Also, check out, this is another way that I've met Michiko, is the Black Docent Collective. They have all different, so much on here that's just Black Philly and the Delaware Valley. And I think I have some videos on there talking about some.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Michiko, that was amazing. Is there anything else you wanted to share about the wonderful Hetty Reckless?
Wow. Well, she died at 105. She had her, she was never officially manumitted. So we don't know if she was one of the last enslaved people because she died after the Civil War. And so she may have just been legally.
So she who was the liberator and caretaker of others, it took the 13th Amendment for her to have her full freedom.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, let's bring on Jim. I see Jim looks like he's a Hetty Reckless fan.
For sure.
Jim likes rebels because he's a rebel. You are. That's what I like about you. So thank you so much, Michiko, for being our special guest here today.
My pleasure, man. Jim, I love this. Thank you.
Thank you for giving us your newspaper methodology that, why wouldn't we use it? Why wouldn't we use it? It's very simple. And there's some kind of a newspaper book out there that might be of use to people. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. Have a good evening. Oh, hold on. I have music for that. Hold on. Jim keeps I forget. Here we go. I think